A Second Chance at Love. Previous episodes are available in playlist, a link is given in the video description. Episode 64. News about the Farwell family's 2 additional young heirs, who were given birth by Lucian's ex-wife, caused an uproar in Horrington. Of course, the journalists took action almost immediately. No one knew how they got the information, but they found and swarmed around Roxanne's research institute and mansion. Roxanne was still asleep when she received a call from Linda telling her not to leave the house that day. When Roxanne received that call, she was still in a daze. However, the moment she got out of bed and saw the crowd outside, she panicked. The crowd was clearly there because of Farwell Group's statement yesterday. Noticing her room's curtains were pulled open, the crowd downstairs hurriedly focused their cameras in the direction of her room window and began snapping pictures. Shocked, Roxanne hastily drew her curtains. At the same time, her phone rang again. She grabbed it to take a glance, only to see it was from an unknown number. Suspicious, she answered it. The person on the other end of the phone asked, "Is this Ms. Jarvis?" "You and Mr. Farwell." Before the caller could finish his sentence, Roxanne hung up with rage swelling in her heart. How on earth did they find my number and address? Are journalists so well informed these days? Just as Roxanne was feeling shocked and annoyed, Estella woke up in a daze. She was happy to see Roxanne still in the room. With a smile, she stretched out her arms and said, "Mommy, I want a hug." Hence, Roxanne recollected herself and picked the girl up. As soon as she caught the latter's scent, she was instantly relieved of her frustration. Nonetheless, Estella seemed to sense Roxanne was in a bad mood. She caressed the latter's face with concern. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Smiling, Roxanne reassured, "It's nothing. Come on. Let's get you washed up." Estella nodded and crawled into Roxanne's arms, curling up into a ball. The weight in Roxanne's arms helped her calm down completely. After all, she had to stay calm since the children were at home. If not, they might get a fright. When Roxanne finished helping Estella wash up, she opened the room door, wanting to go down to prepare breakfast. The moment she opened it, she saw Archie and Benny standing at the door. Archie looked up at his mother, his expression tense. "Mommy, who are those people downstairs? Did Mrs. Farwell send them?" That was their first time seeing such a scene. Moreover, Sonia paid a visit yesterday. Naturally, they thought it was her doing. Roxanne patted their heads to reassure them. "I don't think so. Anyway, you two better not go out today. I'll inform your teacher about this." It was impossible for the children to go out when such a crowd was encircling the house. The boys nodded. Their gazes were filled with wariness as they eyed the people outside who looked like they would barge in any time. In fact, the boys were already thinking of ways to protect Roxanne if they actually barged into the house. In the meantime, Meline had just returned and saw the journalists swarming outside Roxanne's house. She had been busy dealing with a major operation for the past few days and was unaware of the news that was spreading. The first thing that came to her mind when she saw the crowd was that a medical accident had happened. As a doctor herself, Meline knew how much fuss a medical accident could cause. At that thought, she hurriedly pulled out her phone to get to the bottom of it. Instead of finding news about her best friend being involved in a medical incident, she found the latter's scandals. Medeline's eyes went wide when she saw the announcement made by Farewell Group. What happened during the few days that I was away? Does Lucian know about Archie and Benny's true identities? After taking a look at her phone and the journalists crowded in front of her, she began to understand why the journalists had gotten so worked up. There are 2 new members in the Farewell family all of a sudden, so I can see why these journalists are freaking out. Honestly, even I'm a little shocked myself. Whatever tiredness Meline had was completely gone at that point. With a frown on her face, she quickly gave Roxanne a call. However, all she heard was a robotic voice that said, "The number you have dialed is currently busy. Please try again later." She tried calling a few more times, but the outcome was the same. Eventually, Meline put the phone aside in frustration and walked up to the crowd. She wanted to squeeze past the journalists and confront Roxanne about the situation, but she was no match for the journalists at all. After a few failed attempts that resulted in her nearly being stepped on, Meline gave up and returned to the car. "I may not be able to see Roxanne right now, but I should at least be able to see Lucian. The fate of my godsons and my bestie are at stake here, so I absolutely need to get some answers." With that in mind, Meline floored the accelerator and sped away from the mansion gate. She got even angrier when she arrived at Farewell Group and saw no journalists outside the building. Farewell Group was the one who made that announcement, so shouldn't the journalists be coming after Lucian for answers instead? Why are they swarming Roxanne and her kids? Are journalists these days cowardly pieces of trash who pick on the weak and fear the strong? Meline was fuming when she stormed through the office building's entrance. She was about to go upstairs when the receptionist at the front desk stopped her. "I'm sorry, but you will need to wait here if you don't have an appointment." The receptionist had a conflicted look on her face when she found out that Meline was here to see Lucian. It took Meline every ounce of willpower she had to keep herself from lashing out on the spot. After taking a deep breath to calm herself down, she asked, "It was Farewell Group that made that announcement online, right? You know who Roxanne Jarvis is, don't you?" "Well, I'm her best friend, and I'm here to speak to her ex-husband." "Why would you need me to make an appointment for that?" The receptionist had nothing to say in response, but she didn't dare let Meline upstairs either. Tension was starting to rise between them as they continued staring each other down. Eventually, Caden showed up and helped get the receptionist out of that awkward situation. Meline had seen Lucian's assistant before, so she was able to recognize him instantly. "Caden." As Caden was acting upon Lucian's orders to help Roxanne out at the time, all he did was pause in his tracks to glance at Meline. "Hey? Who is this woman? She looks kind of familiar." Meline then ran up to him, grabbed him by the collar, and dragged him toward the elevator. "Take me to Lucian right now." Caden was still trying to recall who Meline was, so her actions caught him completely off guard. By the time he snapped out of his dazed state, the elevator was already on its way up. Having recalled that Meline was Roxanne's best friend, Caden asked politely, "May I know the reason you would like to see Mr. Farewell, Ms. Xander?" "To confront him about what happened to Roxanne, Day. Why else would I even want to see him?" Meline replied angrily as she stormed out of the elevator. Not only did that scumbag hurt Roxanne badly in the past, but he also has the audacity to pester her after she returned from overseas. Caden was so intimidated by her that he simply kept quiet and followed behind her as she walked up to Lucian's office. Meline opened the door and barged right in without even knocking. Lucian had a gloomy look on his face as he stared at the screen of his computer. He was looking at a video of the journalists swarming Roxanne's house and the research institute. Lucian did not expect his actions to cause Roxanne so much trouble. He was snapped out of his train of thought when the door to his office opened all of a sudden. Lucian looked up at the door in displeasure. He was about to say something when Meline yelled, "Get over here, Lucian! You owe me an explanation for the announcement online." She then walked up to Lucian and slammed both hands down on his desk while glaring daggers at him. Lucian frowned slightly as he stared back at her in confusion. After taking a few seconds to recall that Meline was Roxanne's best friend, he suppressed his anger and politely motioned for her to sit down. "Please have a seat." Naturally, Meline was not in the mood to sit down at that moment. "No, you explain this to me first. Since when have my godsons become your sons?" She actually meant to ask Lucian when he found out about their true identities and how he won Roxanne's heart over. However, Lucian's response caught her off guard and left her speechless. "They may not be my biological children, but it's only a matter of time before they address me as their father. I will treat them as my own, so you don't have to worry about a thing," he said patiently while massaging his aching forehead. Meline froze. "Hey? What does he mean by that? Does he still not know Archie and Benny are actually his children? Then, what's with the announcement from Farewell Group?" That was when Meline recalled the search results when she looked up Roxanne's name online. Most of them were questioning Roxanne's relationship with Jack and the true identities of Archie and Benny. Did Lucian make that announcement just to protect them? Meline felt slightly better at the thought of that, but she wasn't about to let Lucian off the hook that easily. What about the journalists gathered outside Roxanne's house, then? What do you plan on doing about them? After all, Lucian was the reason those journalists were there. Instead of answering her question, Lucian simply shot Caden a glance in response. Caden had a conflicted look on his face as he said, "I've already given the press a warning, but there was no way the media would sit around and do nothing after Farewell Group made such a shocking announcement. It was only natural that the journalists would be fighting to get a scoop. Nobody was willing to give up on that golden opportunity, and that mentality resulted in the crowd of journalists getting bigger and bigger over time. There was nothing Caden could do about it at that point." Meline and Lucian understood what he was trying to say even though he didn't finish his sentence. "What will Roxanne and the kids do? They can't just stay home forever," she exclaimed anxiously. "I'll go pick them up," Lucian replied with a grim expression as he stood up and grabbed his coat. After taking a moment to recover from their shock, Meline and Caden quickly stepped in front of him to stop him. "Those journalists just want an answer, be it from me or Roxanne. They'll leave once they get it," Lucian said while staring at them with a straight face. Caden knew he couldn't let Lucian do that, but he didn't know how to talk the latter out of it, so he decided to let Meline do the talking. "Do you really think an answer is all they want? Roxanne is the main focus of this incident, so they'd still continue to pester her even if you showed up?" Meline exclaimed. It wasn't until Lucian heard Madeline's words that he realized her point and stopped in his tracks. This whole incident might just blow over if you don't show up, but it will definitely worsen if you make an appearance. If that happens, they might even swarm Farewell Group along with Roxanne's house. Meline reminded him. She knew the mentality of those journalists all too well. Lucian clenched his fists so tightly that his veins were bulging from underneath his skin. "What should I do, then?" he asked while trying to suppress his anger. "I wouldn't have acted so impulsively if I knew this would happen." Meline rolled her eyes at him in response. "Why is he asking us for a solution when he's the one who caused all this? Mr. Farewell, how about we send someone over to get Mrs. Farewell out of there?" Caden suggested cautiously. "How are you going to do that? There are so many journalists around." Meline snapped at him. Caden fell silent and flashed her an awkward look in response. "If you don't send enough men over, you might not be able to get through the huge crowd of journalists. If you send a lot of men over, people are going to say Farewell Group is throwing its weight around," Meline continued. She knew all the dirty tricks that the press would use. "Do you have any bright ideas, then?" Caden asked as he had run out of ideas at that point. Let me think," Meline replied while stroking her chin. The two of them then lowered their heads and racked their brains for an idea. With a frown on his face, Lucian whipped out his phone and tried giving Roxanne a call. However, her line remained busy no matter how many times he tried. "Don't bother calling her. I tried to do so earlier as well, but her line has been busy the entire time. I bet those journalists are bombarding her with calls as well," Meline said. Sure enough, Roxanne's phone had been switched off when Lucian tried calling again. She must have switched it off because she couldn't stand those journalists calling her. "I can't believe I caused her so much trouble." Right as Lucian was starting to regret his actions, he saw his chat room with Benny and realized he had another option. The frown on his face eased up significantly as he tried calling Benny's number. Those journalists may have obtained Roxanne's number, but there's no way they could get the kids' numbers. The call got through after a few seconds, and Benny could be heard greeting him excitedly on the other line. "Hi, Mr. Farewell. There are lots of people outside our house, and we can't seem to get out at all. Could you come pick us up?" Benny was leaning against the window and staring at the journalists outside the house. Meline and Caden froze in shock when they heard Benny's voice. "Don't worry, I'll figure something out and get you all out of there," Lucian comforted him with an apologetic look in his eyes. He then added after a brief pause, "Could you pass the phone over to your mommy? There's something I need to speak to her about." "Okay." Benny replied in an adorable voice as he hopped off the couch and handed Roxanne the watch. Roxanne had a conflicted look in her eyes. "The kids may not be aware of it, but I know the journalists are here because of Lucian, and I'm sure he knows it as well. He must be calling to apologize or something." For some reason, hearing Benny address him on the phone set my anxious heart at ease. It's as though I have stumbled upon a lifeboat while drifting around at sea. "How are things over there? I'm sorry for what happened. I acted without thinking about the consequences." "How are things over there? I'm sorry for what happened. I acted without thinking about the consequences." Roxanne heard Lucian apologizing the moment she answered the call. The kids were leaning on her thighs and staring at her as they waited to hear Lucian's response. However, Roxanne simply patted them on the head and made her way into the kitchen. Realizing that she wanted to speak to Lucian in private, the kids knew better than to follow her. After finding a quiet spot in the kitchen, Roxanne lowered her voice to a whisper as she said, "I know you did it to protect us, but that announcement was a little too sudden. Besides, Archie and Benny." Lucian cut her off, "It was my idea. Archie and Benny are going to become my children eventually anyway, so I figured I would grant them that identity right away." That was one of the reasons he made that announcement. A lot of people would surely gossip about Roxanne when she married into the Farwell family with Archie and Benny. Since nobody would dare investigate the Farwell family, Lucian decided to announce that they were his kids. Roxanne found herself wavering a little when she heard that. Instead of waiting for her to respond, Lucian continued, "Are the kids scared?" Roxanne nodded. "It's the first time they've seen something like this. I told them to stay indoors, though. As bold as those journalists may be, they wouldn't dare force their way into the house. As long as we don't step out the door, they won't be able to do anything to us. I'm the reason this whole thing happened, so I'll figure out a solution as soon as possible," Lucian said after a brief pause. Noticing the self-blame in his voice, Roxanne comforted him, "I know you meant well. We'll be fine as long as we remain indoors, so you don't have to worry too much about us. Things are only going to get worse if Farwell Group makes another appearance now. I'll try to solve this on my own." Meline shouted at her in the background, "Hang in there, Roxanne. I'll come save you right away." Roxanne froze when she heard that. "Meline? What are you? What is she doing with Lucian?" Lucian turned to look at Meline, who was standing next to him, as he explained, "She barged into my office demanding an explanation." Knowing how aggressive Meline could be and from the way Lucian worded that sentence, Roxanne couldn't help but feel as though he was telling on Meline. As though she were trying to calm an angry child down, Roxanne said in a gentle voice, "Meline is a little hot-tempered, so please don't take her words to heart. She's just worried about me and the boys." Lucian simply remained silent after hearing that. "Oh, I have an idea!" Meline exclaimed while slamming her fist into her palm. She then snatched the phone over and said, "Hang in there, Roxanne. I'll come pick you up right now, so just stay where you are." Meline hung up the phone before Roxanne could even respond, much to Lucian's displeasure. The look in Lucian's eyes grew increasingly colder as he glared at Meline. Even Caden was getting a little nervous as he watched from the side. Did Ms. Xander just end the call between Mr. Farwell and Mrs. Farwell without his permission? I sure hope she has come up with a good idea to get Mrs. Farwell out of there. As Meline had thought of a great idea, she ignored their expressions and began explaining her plan. "Mommy, is Mr. Farwell coming to pick us up?" Benny shot her a look of anticipation. "Mommy, is Mr. Farwell coming to pick us up?" Benny shot her a look of anticipation. The children had gathered around Roxanne when they saw her emerge from the kitchen. After returning the watch to her son, Roxanne reassured her children, "Mr. Farwell is thinking of a solution too. Don't worry. As long as I'm around, I won't let them enter." As he put his watch back on, Benny looked at his mother earnestly. Don't be afraid, Mommy. Archie and I will protect you and Essie. Roxanne kissed his forehead with a smile. Thank you, boys. After leading them upstairs, Roxanne peeked out the window to look at the swarm of reporters. What greeted her was a sight that filled her eyes with concern. Before ending the call, Meline mentioned that she had a plan but didn't explain the details. Worried that Meline would get herself in trouble again, Roxanne hoped to come up with a solution before the former did anything impulsive. With that, Roxanne fell into deep thought. All of a sudden, Benny looked up at the sky and gave her sleeve a tug. Mommy, look out there! Roxanne quickly regained her senses and followed the trajectory of her son's finger. Up in the sky, she saw a helicopter flying slowly toward their house. Staring at it, she wondered if she was seeing things. Nevertheless, the helicopter continued on its path and even seemed to be descending as if it was going to land nearby. Roxanne couldn't help but be shocked by the scene. As it was the first time the children saw a helicopter with their own eyes, all of them cheered in excitement. It must be Mr. Farwell coming to pick us up. Benny's eyes glistened as he stared at the approaching helicopter outside the window. He was filled with the urge to rush outside to welcome it. As for Archie, he watched the helicopter intently, secretly vowing to buy one with his own effort in the future. No, I'll buy an even bigger one. The baffled Estella clung tightly to Roxanne's sleeve. She tilted her head to look at the helicopter outside before returning her gaze to the boys and their contrasting reactions. After hugging Estella in her arms to comfort her, Roxanne turned her attention toward the ground floor. The closer the helicopter flew, the louder its rotors were. Noticing the commotion above their heads, the reporters looked up at the sky one by one. At the sight of the helicopter descending right above them, they quickly backed off when they felt the pressure of the swirling rotors against their skin. Mr. Farwell! It has to be Mr. Farwell, someone in the crowd yelled. Upon realizing what was going on, the reporters began snapping photos of the helicopter furiously. Finally, the helicopter hovered in place upon reaching the same level as the balcony. With her brows slightly furrowed, Roxanne got to her feet to get a closer look together with the children. This must be part of Meline's plan. I wonder where she's going with this. When they arrived at the balcony, they could see the helicopter hovering a single step away. The next moment, its door opened slowly. Standing there was a smiling Meline, who waved excitedly at them. Archie, Benny, I'm here to pick you up. Do I look cool or what? The sight brought a sparkle to the children's eyes as they exclaimed, You're awesome, Aunt Meline. Meanwhile, Roxanne was still lost in a daze. Meline, what? Meanwhile, Roxanne was still lost in a daze. Meline, what? Cocking a brow, Meline stepped aside to usher them in. Come on board. I'm here to pick you up. Roxanne was blown away by the words. Is she asking us to get in the helicopter and leave just like that? We might be able to escape this time, but what about when the reporters come for us again? When she saw Roxanne remaining motionless, the puzzled Meline urged her, Hurry up! What are you still hesitating for? Whatever concerns you have, we'll discuss it on board. She extended her hand while speaking. With the helicopter hovering right before her eyes, Roxanne realized that Medeline's effort would go to waste if she didn't get on. Holding that thought, Roxanne took the latter's hand. Given how close the helicopter was, all she needed to do was take a step forward to board it. After carrying Estella over, Roxanne turned around to do the same with the boys. Little did she expect them to be raring to go. Reciprocating their enthusiasm, Meline grabbed the boys with one hand each and pulled them over. Roxanne, who initially assumed they would be afraid, was surprised to see the excitement on their faces. Once they got on board, they scrutinized every inch of the helicopter curiously. It was as if they had forgotten the reason they were on it. Since they were not showing any fear, Roxanne breathed a sigh of relief. While the helicopter gradually ascended into the sky, Meline stood courageously by the cabin door, whetting the reporters' appetite for pictures. She even gave them a delighted wave as if she was bidding them farewell. "What are you doing? Come back in here. It's dangerous." Roxanne couldn't help but gasp at Medeline's actions. It wasn't until the helicopter was out of the reporter's sight that the latter closed the cabin door reluctantly. "Is this the plan you came up with?" Roxanne looked at her in disbelief. She felt that the method was too dramatic and didn't solve the fundamental problem. If the reporters were persistent in their pursuit, the helicopter would only help them to escape that one time. Meline patted Roxanne on the shoulder to comfort her. "Don't worry. There's more to my plan than just picking you up." Roxanne threw her friend a resigned look. "I wonder how a doctor like her gets all these outrageous ideas. To be honest, I was swamped with work the past few days. It wasn't until this morning that I saw the news on the internet. The fact that he has publicly declared all the children to be his has changed my perception of him," Meline lamented. Even though she knew Archie and Benny were Lucian's children, Lucian didn't. For a rich and powerful man like him to acknowledge another man's children as his own, he must love Roxanne a lot. Now that Lucian had proven himself, Meline felt that she could strike his name off her list of jerks. That said, she still needed time to consider whether she could hand over her best friend to him. Upon hearing Medeline's words, Roxanne felt her eyes twitch slightly, causing her to avoid Medeline's teasing gaze out of embarrassment. Nevertheless, Meline continued, "When I requested a helicopter from him, he provided one without hesitation. He's such a rich and generous man." Also, pausing briefly, Meline leaned toward Roxanne's ear with an enigmatic smile. "It's quite clear to me that he's worried about all of you. He almost charged through the crowd of reporters to get you all." As Roxanne's ears burned, she pretended to stay calm and nudged Meline back before looking around. As Roxanne's ears burned, she pretended to stay calm and nudged Meline back before looking around. "Where is he?" The he in her question was self-explanatory. Meline flashed a meaningful smile. "It seems to me that you're worried about him too." Jolted by her friend's words, Roxanne lowered her voice. "It was just a casual question. Didn't you mention that the helicopter belonged to him?" Knowing Roxanne like the back of her hand, Meline could see how embarrassed the former was. Hence, she decided to stop putting her in a spot. "Don't be anxious. I'm bringing you to see him, aren't I?" The frowning Roxanne retorted, "Who says I'm anxious?" Meline burst out in laughter. The three children, who were engrossed in examining the helicopter's design, came over curiously upon hearing Madeline's laughter. "Aunt Madeline, what are you laughing about?" The puzzled Benny tugged at Madeline's sleeve. When she finally forced herself to regain her composure, Madeline eyed her friend's reproachful expression before changing the topic smoothly. "Nothing, really. So, are you enjoying yourselves on the helicopter?" The topic quickly caught the children's attention, to which they nodded vigorously. "We are." At the same time, they divulged Archie's secret. "Archie says that he wants to buy us a bigger helicopter next time." Madeline burst into laughter again at the children's innocent words. This time, Roxanne couldn't help but join her. However, when she saw the rare expression of embarrassment on Archie's face, Roxanne suppressed her laughter as she gave his hair a tousle. "You'll definitely be able to do it, Archie. Don't forget to let me ride in it next time." Roxanne's encouragement brought a smile to Archie's face as he nodded obediently. Beaming, Madeline suggested, "There's no need to wait till then. Your daddy already has a bigger helicopter. It's just not suitable to fly within city limits." When she asked Lucian for the helicopter, she had overheard Caden asking the latter which model to deploy. The children's eyes lit up while their faces glowed with anticipation after hearing Madeline's comment. As for Roxanne, she was shaken to hear the way her friend addressed Lucian. The words caused her heart to suddenly tense up out of habit. Madeline clarified, "Those are not my words." Mr. Farwell acknowledged the children on the internet himself. Only then did Roxanne regain her senses and smile awkwardly at the children. Truth be told, Archie and Benny were the first to find out about it. That was why they weren't surprised by Madeline's revelation. Whenever Madeline was around, the children were always in good hands, for they got along very well with her. After a short journey in the air, the helicopter landed on the rooftop of a hotel. Madeline stopped fooling around with the children and led them down. The moment they emerged from the helicopter, they spotted Lucian standing on the landing pad waiting for them. He was dressed in a suit and leather shoes, while his hair was strewn all over his face from the gale emitted by the helicopter rotors. As he stared intently at the cabin door, his eyes were brimming with concern and guilt. "I've brought them back to you. You had better not cause them any more trouble," Madeline warned. However, her words fell on deaf ears, for all Lucian could focus on was Roxanne and the children. "Are you all right?" He strode up to her and scrutinized her quickly. After throwing Madeline a glance, Roxanne returned her attention to the nervous Lucian. She maintained an indifferent expression despite her embarrassment. "I'm fine. It's all thanks to Madeline that we managed to make it here. However, I just brought up the rough idea. It was Mr. Farwell who thought of all the details." Madeline didn't dare take any credit. "Let's talk inside the hotel." "It's getting chilly outside," Madeline suggested tactfully, mindful that the two were too shy to say anything in her presence. "Let's talk inside the hotel." "It's getting chilly outside," Madeline suggested tactfully, mindful that the two were too shy to say anything in her presence. Roxanne nodded before circling around Lucian to walk ahead. Just as she brushed past his shoulder, Lucian reached out his hand but retracted it at the last minute with a frown. Given that he was the cause of her current predicament, he didn't want to burden her any further as she already had a lot on her plate emotionally. Meanwhile, there was no need for them to make reservations because the hotel they were in belonged to Farwell Group. Lucian had ordered the penthouse to be cleared so that they could live there for the time being. Upon arriving at the suite, Meline led the children to another room, cognizant that the two adults needed some privacy to talk. No sooner had Roxanne entered the room than she heard the door close behind her. Turning around, she realized that she was alone with Lucian. Meline and the children were nowhere to be found. Thereafter, the frowning Lucian approached her with weighty footsteps. "Where's Meline and the rest?" Roxanne asked cluelessly. Instead of replying, Lucian walked up to her and grabbed her hand in a domineering manner, preventing her from leaving. "Are you guys all right?" Lucian repeated his question from the rooftop. A warm smile gradually broke out across Roxanne's face when she sensed his concern for her. "We're fine." The kids were frightened initially but calmed down after they learned that the reporters couldn't enter. As she spoke, she glowered at him. Instead, it was the sudden appearance of the helicopter that gave us a shock. Brows knitted, Lucian explained helplessly, "I couldn't think of any other way. Besides, I sent the smallest helicopter we have in Farwell Group." He, too, had his doubts when Meline first raised the idea. It wasn't until he deliberated upon it that he decided rescuing the mother and children was the priority. Even though Roxanne was just joking, the mention of the helicopter did frustrate her. "I understand, but isn't sending the helicopter too dramatic? I'm not sure how this incident is going to blow up subsequently." "I'm afraid." The distraught look on Roxanne's face caused Lucian's eyes to darken as he pulled her into his embrace. He reassured her, "Don't be afraid. I'll deal with this. I won't let them interfere with your life." Roxanne, who was about to push him away, decided against it when Lucian's calming scent filled her senses. Thereafter, she hesitated for a few seconds before wrapping her arms around his waist. Even though they ran into trouble today, Roxanne was touched by Lucian's acknowledgement of Archie and Benny as his own children, a choice he made without knowing the truth about their origins. In that instant, a warm atmosphere descended upon the room. The room door flung open abruptly, heralding Benny's childish voice. "Mommy!" Behind him was an anxious-looking Meline. "Don't go in. Your daddy and mommy need to talk." No sooner had she spoken than she saw the two adults locked in a tight embrace. The sight caused Meline and the children to stop in their tracks. The two groups stared at each other, the newcomers wondering if they could still back out of the room and pretend that nothing happened. At the same time, the disruption caused Roxanne to freeze. Upon regaining her senses, she pushed herself out of Lucian's arms by reflex. "We didn't see anything." Meline smiled mischievously as she feigned ignorance. The children nodded along. "We didn't either." Then, Meline attempted to sneak away with the kids as though nothing had happened. Just as she turned around, Roxanne said, "Come over here. Let's talk." Thus, Meline twirled around again and saw a resigned expression on her best friend's face. Roxanne and Lucian, who was slightly displeased, proceeded to sit next to each other on the couch. Upon hearing their mother's summon, the children rushed over to sit around her. Only Meline was left standing at the entrance of the room. Glancing at the family of 5, she cleared her throat, stepped toward the single-seat couch, and plopped down. Frowning, Roxanne questioned, you said you've devised a way to handle the fallout. What do you suggest we do? In response, Lucian shifted his line of sight to Meline, too. Meline could still sense the cold look in his eyes, so she did her best to ignore him and focus on Roxanne. It's not that difficult. It just depends if you all are willing to spend some money. A perplexed expression was set on Roxanne's countenance. Meanwhile, Lucian asked, "How much?" After a brief silence, Meline said, "Nowadays, news on the internet updates fast. While Farwell Group is an influential entity in Horrington, the public still cares more about celebrities." She paused and stared at the people before her. The smart couple understood her intentions immediately. "So you're saying we should buy and spread celebrity scandals on the internet to shift the public's attention?" asked Roxanne. Smiling, Meline nodded. "That's right. Though the amount of money required to pull this off isn't little, I don't think it's considered plenty for Farwell Group. Since Lucian's the one who caused the trouble, it's only fitting for him to bring an end to this matter. I doubt he'll refuse." Upon understanding her plan, Lucian contacted Caden to do as she suggested. The internet was set on fire again that afternoon. Scandals about various celebrities were exposed to the public. Almost every trending title started with the phrase "explosive news." The public swiftly shifted their attention from Farwell Group to the celebrities. Many reporters did the same as they promptly surrounded the celebrities with their cameras. In just a short time, all reporters who previously encircled the research institute and Roxanne's house were gone. Roxanne was stunned when she saw the drastic shift on the internet. Glancing at Lucian, she remarked, "This. You must have spent a lot of money. Earlier, I saw plenty of scandals on the internet and even an official announcement of a high-profile celebrity's romantic relationship. No wonder the focus of the public changed so fast." Lucian acted as though it was nothing noteworthy. Money is never a concern for Farwell Group. Besides, not all matters can be solved with money. Deals with celebrities more often involved resource exchange than money. What they needed were fame, resources, and many more. Thankfully, Farwell Group's contract with a product spokesperson had just expired. Therefore, when the high-profile celebrity proposed a collaboration, Lucian agreed. "You don't need to worry about that for Mr. Farwell, Roxanne. Farwell Group is so rich that they won't even bat an eye at how much he spent. Moreover, minor celebrities would die for a chance to help Farwell Group." Meline comforted. Roxanne contemplated her best friend's words and thought it made sense. Thus, she stopped speaking. Meanwhile, when Meline registered the point she made, she believed Lucian hadn't done enough to make up for the fright her best friend and the children endured. In a concerned tone, she advised, "While the public's focus has been shifted away, it'll still be for the best if all of you stay out of the media's sight for the time being." Roxanne nodded in agreement. "I don't think it'll be a problem. In my case, I'll only be either at home or at the research institute, so unless the reporters specifically sought me out, that's what I'm worried about." Meline interrupted. "I'm concerned some reporters won't give up." That outburst stunned Roxanne because she had more to say. Lucian's expression darkened slightly while he gripped Roxanne's hand as though no one was around. "For now, you shouldn't go to the research institute anymore. Just in case." Upon detecting his movement, she felt her heart clenching. As she glanced at her friend, she tried pulling her hand away, but he was stronger than her. Hence, she reluctantly and awkwardly allowed him to keep holding her hand. Meline gazed at Lucian assertively. "Don't you think you should make up for the trouble you brought Roxanne, Mr. Farwell?" In response, Lucian knitted his eyebrows and gave her statement some genuine consideration. Resignedly, Roxanne clarified, "It's nothing serious. I can do overtime later to make up for the work I missed." Meline shot her a glance, silencing her, before turning to look at Lucian. "You have a private plane, right, Mr. Farwell? Why not use it to bring her to Moralia for a trip? You two can hide from the reporters there and use the opportunity to relax." Lucian was moved by her proposal. "I did tell Roxanne I'd bring the children out for a trip when we went to Jade Burrows some time ago. However, after she returned here, she was busy with her work, so I never got the chance to fulfill my promise. I suppose now is an excellent opportunity to do so." Hence, he turned to Roxanne and inquired, "How about we visit Moralia, Roxanne? We did talk about bringing the children on a trip before." Roxanne hesitated because the collaboration with the Damaris family to develop a new medicine had just been moved ahead of schedule. Benny grabbed the hem of her shirt and asked excitedly, "Are we really going to Moralia, Mommy?" Estella blinked and stared at Roxanne with anticipation. The children's stares were making Roxanne waver. Still, she wondered, what about school? Meline shrugged. "Just apply leaves for them." Then she turned to the children. "Do you three want to go to school or Moralia?" Without hesitation, the kids answered, "Moralia. That's more like it." Meline nodded satisfactorily. "I've also been busy for a long while, so it's about time for me to wind down." Suddenly, she shut herself up after realizing something. Roxanne narrowed her eyes at her best friend. "You just want to visit Moralia without paying for the trip?" Realizing her intention had been exposed, Meline argued, "Since you all need to avoid the reporters, you may as well visit another country instead of hiding in your home. Besides, I saved you, so I don't think bringing me along on your trip is too much to ask for." Roxanne wasn't sure what to do with her friend, so she turned to Lucian, asking for his opinion. In response, Meline tacitly raised her hand and vowed, "I promise I won't disturb any of you." In the end, Lucian called Geoffrey and requested a week's leave for the children. With that out of the way, the three adults took the three children on a trip to Moralia. Just as Geoffrey hung up the phone, a gentle-looking teacher entered the room. "You're here, Ms. Smith," he greeted. "You understand the situation about the class, yes? Mr. Farwell's children are in it, and the assistant teacher is on leave. I'm worried Ms. Ward won't be able to manage the class alone, so you'll be helping her out for now." Smiling, Ophelia Smith nodded. "I understand, Mr. Bauer. You don't need to worry a thing." Geoffrey scrutinized her and thought she looked pretty gentle. "I'm leaving them in your hands, so don't mess things up. Should I greet them now? They've just started their 1-week leave. Once they've returned, Ms. Ward will introduce them to you." When Ophelia heard that, the look in her eyes imperceptibly darkened for just a moment. "I see. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave now." Jeffrey told her a couple more things before allowing her to leave. The instant she stepped out of the office, her smile was replaced with a glower. She strode to a corner and called someone. The other person picked up the phone quickly. "How did it go? Have you come in contact with them?" questioned Aubrey in a grim voice. Apologetically, Ophelia answered, "I've just arrived at the kindergarten, and Mr. Bauer told me the children will only return after their 1-week leave." "What?" Aubrey growled unhappily. "I can't wait even a single second longer anymore, yet they'll only return after a week?" Ophelia explained in a whisper, "There's nothing I can do. I didn't expect things would be so coincidental. Once they return, I'll definitely..." In response, Aubrey pinched her palm to calm herself down. When she opened her mouth again, serenity had returned to her voice. "It's fine. They can't run, anyway. In the meantime, familiarize yourself with the kindergarten. Contact me again once they return." She treated Ophelia rather politely because there weren't any benefits binding the latter to her. Nodding, Ophelia assured, "I'll do that the moment they return." Since Ophelia hadn't gotten a chance to interact with the children, Aubrey had nothing much else to say and ended the call. The latter then glanced at her phone, which was displaying her social media app. When Aubrey saw that news about Roxanne had been flushed away by a staggering number of celebrity scandals, she scowled. "I thought the reporters this morning could cause Roxanne some trouble and force her to give up. To my surprise, Lucian took her away via a helicopter. I recognized it in the pictures the reporters were taking of her. Also, it's evident these celebrity scandals are due to Farwell Group's intervention. I can't believe how much Lucian did for that. What about me, hey? The only thing he did for me was take away my house. No, I refuse to let that live a comfortable life." Meanwhile, Roxanne and her family were having a wonderful time in Moralia. The boys clung to Lucian for practically their entire stay, but he didn't mind. In fact, he brought them to experience plenty of exciting activities. As for Estella, Roxanne and Meline brought her along while they took plenty of pictures of the ocean view. They even helped her dress up like a cute mermaid. They had a lot of fun during that week of vacation. While the children wanted to stay for a couple more days, Roxanne had to return home for work. Meline and Lucian couldn't stay for long as well. Therefore, they all returned to their country when the week was up. After a week, the public had forgotten all about Farwell Group's incident, and Roxanne was free of the reporters. However, Lucian was still worried about his family, so he ordered a few bodyguards to watch over her and the children in secret. The morning after they returned to the country, Roxanne sent the children to the kindergarten before heading to the research institute. "I wonder how much the project has progressed during my week of absence." Just as she stepped into her office, Linda approached her. "Dr. Jarvis." Roxanne nodded. "Did the research institute face any troubles over the past week?" She had been under Meline and Lucian's surveillance during the past week, so she had minimal opportunities to contact the research institute. Her concern that the reporters would visit the research institute and negatively affect the researchers' work never left her mind. If the reporters did that, she'd have no idea how to face the employees because she ran away after causing such a big mess and left the staff to fend for themselves. Thankfully, Linda shook her head. "No. After that morning, the reporters were distracted by all the celebrity scandals. A few who wanted to interview us sent their requests through proper channels, but I rejected them. Hearing that eased Roxanne up. However, Linda was still grimacing. "What's the matter?" inquired Roxanne, perplexed. "Mr. Damaris has been visiting the research institute over the past week to meet you. It was apparent he was quite upset you weren't present. It was something Linda should have reported as soon as possible because it was an official matter of the research institute. However, because of the news on the internet some time ago, she hadn't been sure if she should. After all, Jack didn't reveal his intentions every time he visited. She didn't know if he came because of the project or because of the online discourse." Roxanne was taken aback upon hearing that. "Jack visited the research institute to meet me?" In response, she checked her phone but saw no unanswered calls from Jack. "It would seem he wasn't looking for me due to an urgent matter." Still, she called him out of courtesy. The phone rang for a while before Jack answered the call. "I didn't expect you to have the time to call me, Ms. Jarvis, since you're such a busy woman." Mockery was obvious in his tone. It was the first time she heard him use that tone, so she was stunned for a few seconds before she apologized. "I'm sorry. I wasn't in the country during the past week. Linda just told me you visited the research institute to meet me. Is there a problem with the project?" The mockery didn't subside from his tone as he spoke again. "Is that so? I wonder what you were doing overseas last week." Of course, he knew why she was in another country and that she had gone there with Lucian. While the reporter's photos depicted a woman standing at the helicopter door, Jack knew Lucian was behind it. He thought the matter had ended when the celebrity scandals dominated the public consciousness that afternoon. Thus, the next day, he planned to meet up with Roxanne by using the project as an excuse. To his surprise, her assistant told him she wasn't in the research institute. In fact, he received the same answer over the next few days. By then, no matter how stupid Jack was, he could still realize what was happening. He knew Roxanne had left with Lucian, so he wondered how long it would take them to return. To his surprise, it was a whole week, and that enraged him. Jack was still upset as he spoke. "Even though the development of our project was about to begin, the person in charge of the research institute was nowhere to be found. What do you think I should say about that, Ms. Jarvis?" When he brought up the project, Roxanne felt guilty and apologized further. "I'm really sorry. Due to a personal issue, I had to lie low for a while and inadvertently delayed the project." "You've every right to be angry, Mr. Damaris. I promise that I won't disappear again after the project starts. You'll be able to find me whenever you want." Her answer satisfied him. Knowing where she went with Lucian or what she did during the past week doesn't matter. What matters is that I can win her over as long as she remains within my reach. When his train of thought ended there, Jack complained with a softened tone, "Don't you think you should make up for all my wasted trips here, Ms. Jarvis? An apology isn't enough." Upon detecting the change in his tone, Roxanne sighed in relief in her mind and grinned. "Of course. Tell me when you're free, and I'll treat you to a meal." "Sure, but I'll decide the location of our meal as well. You'll be spending quite a bit of money, Ms. Jarvis." As long as I can lighten your mood, I'm willing to spend as much money as necessary. We'll also use the opportunity to speak about the project's progress. The research development was delayed because of your absence, after all. I'm sorry. Forget about it. There's nothing we can do to regain lost time. I'll be pleased as long as our collaboration is successful. Still believe in your research institute's capabilities. After exchanging a few more words, they ended the call. Roxanne turned to Linda and blurted, "You're right. Mr. Damaris was a little angry at me. Were any other projects in the research institute delayed?" Shaking her head, Linda answered, "Everything was fine." Then she stared at Roxanne carefully. "Dr. Jarvis, about the news regarding Mr. Damaris from a few days ago?" Roxanne had already guessed what Linda was going to say and explained, "Don't believe what you see on the internet. Damaris Group is an important partner of ours. Just treat him as you used to." Upon receiving a clear answer, Linda nodded. After a while, Jack texted Roxanne the location and time of their meal. She read the text, spared a few more words to Linda, and left the research institute. The location Jack picked for his meal date with Roxanne was a cafe with a quaint flair. In fact, it had a vibe similar to the Damaris residence. When she arrived, Jack was already waiting for her inside. Upon noticing her, he stood and gestured at her. She quickened her pace and sat opposite from him. Having learned their lesson from the last time, they sat at a table in the corner this time. A sandalwood incense was burning nearby them. Roxanne felt strangely comfortable when she took in the scent of the incense, possibly because she was used to the smell of traditional medicine. Hence, she didn't give it too much thought because she assumed it was the cafe's specialty. "I'm sorry for being late again," apologized Roxanne with embarrassment after taking her seat. "We're meeting up this time because I wanted to make up for the fact that my disappearance last week caused a delay in the project's progress. Yet, I'm late again. I feel so rude." Jack smiled nonchalantly and poured her a cup of coffee. "It's fine. This cafe is quite far from the research institute, and I just happened to be near this area." As he spoke, he casually fiddled with the incense burner. Seeing that he didn't seem to mind her tardiness, Roxanne let out a sigh of relief. "I should be the one apologizing to you," Jack abruptly said. That puzzled her. "Why is he apologizing to me? In the end, I was the reason the public focused on you." Gazing at her apologetically, he continued, "If I hadn't changed the time to night time, those reporters wouldn't have taken those pictures and said those things on the internet." When he brought that up, Roxanne felt conflicted. "I suppose he is right." As though Jack had read her mind, he explained sincerely, "I really did have something I needed to attend to during noon that day. One of Damaris Group's companies that sells medicinal herbs had a bit of a problem that required my assistance." Of course, she had no intention of blaming him. She merely thought what happened that night was too coincidental. Thus, she replied, "I know you didn't change the time without reason. Neither of us would have expected reporters to be following us. Besides, the incident's over." Out of nowhere, Jack sighed a little. "So, you've gotten back together with Mr. Farwell?" That dumbfounded Roxanne for a few seconds. "What am I supposed to say to that? My relationship with Lucian can't be easily explained. The look in his eyes darkened when she didn't immediately respond. However, when her line of sight landed on his countenance again, he acted normal and questioned icily, "I'm assuming you spent your time away with him." Instead of denying it, Roxanne answered, "We needed to lie low because the media had their sights on us." Jack was displeased that she didn't reveal where she went or what she did with Lucian. However, he didn't want to keep himself in a bad mood, so he changed the topic. "In the period you were away, I did some research related to the development of the new medicine. I feel like perhaps we can change the trajectory of the project. The market's been lacking in anti-cancer medicine, especially ones centered on traditional medicine." In response, Roxanne pondered the issue with a grim expression. "I noticed that previously. However, it'll be difficult to pull off because the public prefers to rely on Western medicine to combat cancer." He proceeded to brief her about the result of his research and concluded, "Perhaps we can be the first to achieve that feat." Is it just me, or does Jack's attitude seem different from his usual? Stifling the strange feeling in her chest, Roxanne grinned at Jack. "I won't regret it. If you wish for us to research anti-cancer medicine, I'll still do my best." He lifted his coffee cup at her. "In that case, let us toast to our collaboration's success with coffee instead of wine." Without delay, she clinked her cup with his. After the two of them briefly discussed the research progress, they determined the project's starting date. They also talked about when Damara's group would provide how much medicinal herbs to the research institute. When their meeting concluded, it was already evening. Standing up to leave, Roxanne glanced at her phone and saw it was time for classes in the kindergarten to be dismissed. Then Linda called her, asking her if she should pick up the children. Roxanne said no because the children had been complaining about her occupation with her work and voicing their desire for her to pick them up. "Based on the result of my discussion with Jack, I'll be getting busy again in the next few days. I think I should spend my free time with the children when I still have some." As she thought, she drove to the kindergarten. Upon arriving at her destination, she saw two teachers leading the children out of the kindergarten in a line. Then she noticed an unfamiliar teacher standing next to Pippa. "She looks gentle." "Ms. Jarvis, this is our kindergarten's new teacher, Ms. Smith. She's taking care of Archie's class with me," Pippa introduced. In response, Roxanne smiled politely. "Nice to meet you, Ms. Smith. I'll be counting on you to look after my children." Silently, Ophelia scrutinized Roxanne. Before returning to the country, I often listened to Aubrey complaining about Roxanne on the phone and describing how Roxanne snatched Farwell Group's CEO from her. It's why I've been curious about what kind of person Roxanne is. Now that I've seen her for myself, based on her face alone, I think she does have the potential to be a vixen." When her train of thought ended, she greeted Roxanne politely. Soon, the entrance was clogged with the parents of other children. Roxanne bade the two teachers goodbye and brought the children into her car. "Do you like the new teacher?" she asked caringly on the ride home. The children exchanged glances with odd expressions. "What's the matter? You don't like her?" Benny answered, "No, we just thought she was a bit weird because she kept staring at us. Even during group activities, that new teacher constantly tried to approach us, but she was hindered by the other children." In response, Roxanne glanced at the children through the rearview mirror apologetically. I'm sorry. It's probably because of what happened a few days ago and the fact Ms. Smith is a new teacher that she's curious about you all. When I returned to the research institute after Lucian announced the children's background to the world, plenty of employees there stared at me with slightly different looks, too. I suppose the new teacher is just like them, curious about us. She comforted, if you all don't like it, I'll tell Ms. Ward tomorrow to remind Ms. Smith not to stare. The children nodded. Roxanne's life was soon back on the right track while Lucian's was still in chaos. Lucian considered going to Roxanne's place in the evening after handling all the accumulated work in Farwell Group. However, he received a phone call from his mother, who asked him to return home as soon as possible. Lucian furrowed his brows at his mother's annoyed tone. Nevertheless, he still drove back to the manor. As soon as he stepped into the house, he was greeted by the sight of Sonia sitting on the couch. "Why are you here?" he questioned with a frown. Sonia turned to look at him and said unhappily, "If I hadn't come here, I wouldn't even know you were back." He had not mentioned to anyone about him going overseas with Roxanne. Sonia had come over every day to ask her son for an explanation but always ended up empty-handed. When she called him and mentioned Roxanne and the kids, he would always give a half-hearted response before hanging up. Hence, Sonia had nowhere to vent her anger. Since they were finally back, she naturally had to have a talk with her son. Lucian knew she didn't have good intentions, and his expression darkened. He walked over to the couch but didn't sit down, making it clear that he had no intention of engaging in a lengthy conversation with her. Sonia's expression turned dark when she realized this. "What do you mean by this? Roxanne hasn't married into the family yet, but you're already on her side." Lucian was used to Sonia's animosity toward Roxanne and said calmly, "I'm on her side because of your hostility toward her. If you can stop being like this, I would love for you and her to get along well." Enraged, Sonia slammed the table. "Unbelievable! Do you believe you're right? What's the deal with the two kids? Do you even know who you are? How dare you accept the two illegitimate children and even fabricate their backgrounds?" Lucian looked at his mother without saying anything in response. As she spoke, she gradually sounded angrier. "Do you know how many relatives called me recently? They even prepared monetary gifts for those two bastards. What do you want me to say to them?" Those relatives were so eager to get in their good books that they even suggested having a welcoming party for the two children. When Sonia heard the suggestion, she almost fainted from anger. How dare they suggest having a welcoming party for those two bastards? Not only has Lucian gone insane, but are these relatives going senile too? Nevertheless, Lucian had already made a public statement. Sonia couldn't publicly chastise her son, so she could only give half-hearted responses to her relatives' questions. Lucian was unfazed and stated matter-of-factly, "I already asked for Roxanne's hand in marriage. She accepted it, so it's only a matter of time before Archie and Benny become my children. They aren't illegitimate children. When those relatives ask you, you can tell them they are the sons of the Farwell family." Sonia was hit by another wave of dizziness. It was more shocking to hear this from her son's lips than reading it on the internet. He's adamant about accepting the two illegitimate children into the family. After a long moment, she finally regained her senses. She massaged her forehead and said, "I don't accept this. There are so many people eyeing Farwell Group's assets. Even those relatives can't wait to get their hands on some of it. However, you're giving them to two children from unknown backgrounds so easily. This is unacceptable to me." Sonia had never entertained the thought of her being in the wrong. She had always thought she was looking out for the Farwell family and that it was Lucian who was becoming more and more unreasonable. With that, she glanced at her son expectantly. She only wished for him to understand her intentions. However, there was no change in Lucian's expression. "Farwell Group's success is largely attributable to me. I'll manage how I split my assets on my own." If Archie and Benny had the capability, he didn't mind passing Farwell Group on to them. Sonia was rendered speechless upon hearing this. Lucian glanced at her. "Besides, they are still young. It's too early for you to worry about this." Sonia wanted to say something, but Lucian interjected, "On the contrary, take a look at your age. You should stop meddling in such insignificant matters. I am capable of managing my own affairs. Why don't you go out with my father and travel if you have so much time? It will be beneficial to your health." With that, he headed upstairs without giving Sonia a chance to speak. Looking at her son's retreating figure, Sonia huffed in anger. "What do you mean by that? Stop right there!" As if he hadn't heard her, Lucian vanished after making a turn on the stairs. "Old Mrs. Farwell, calm down." Catalina tried to pacify Sonia's anger by giving her a cup of coffee. Seeing this, Sonia became even more agitated. "Even you are making a joke out of me. Do you want that Jarvis woman to come back as well?" Catalina sighed quietly to herself. "Mrs. Farwell is who told you to refer to her like that? She will never marry into the family as long as I'm alive," Sonia uttered pettily. Catalina remained silent. She knew Roxanne would soon be part of the Farwell family again, and Sonia's opinion of her would undoubtedly change eventually. Sonia was in no mood to talk to her anymore. After sitting on the couch for a while, she took her bag and left the house in a fury. Elias returned to the Farwell main residence at the same time Sonia did. Seeing her furious demeanor, he approached her with a puzzled look and asked, "What happened? Why are you so angry?" His question jogged her memory of what Lucian had said to her. Her mood instantly soured, and she retorted, "Why are you asking me? You should go and ask Lucian." Elias sat beside her. What did Lucian do? He had never gotten involved in Lucian's relationship matters because he was confident his son could handle them well. However, he was aware that his wife was constantly concerned about it. Now that the marriage engagement with the Pearson family had been cancelled, he felt Lucian's marriage was the latter's personal matter, so he didn't understand what Sonia was mad about. Sonia glared at him. "Didn't you see Farwell Group's statement? Lucian must be insane. Shouldn't you do something about it as his father?" Elias was dumbfounded upon getting scolded by his wife. Naturally, he had seen the public statement, but he knew the two children would need to have legitimate identities when Roxanne and Lucian got together. Compared to letting the children enter the family with unknown backgrounds, Lucian's method would spare the family a lot of trouble in the future. Of course, this was on the pretext that Roxanne was going to marry into the Farwell family. Sonia's expression turned darker when Elias didn't reply to her. Do you also think that he has done nothing wrong? Elias frowned, and when he spoke, his voice was tinged with a hint of exasperation. I've long since told you to let Lucian make the decisions himself when it comes to his marriage. Everyone is free to live their own lives. Why must we meddle so much? Disapproval was written all over Sonia's face. How could I possibly allow that? Is Lucian's marriage his business alone? Never mind if he wants to marry some other woman, but why must it be that woman? Why must it be Roxanne? Worse still, she comes with 2 little bastards. Seeing that she was still dissatisfied with Roxanne, Elias patiently cajoled, no matter who he wants to be with, that's his business. He matured into an adult ages ago. We can't interfere in everything. But still, Sonia remained obstinate and griped, if he had finalized his marriage with Aubrey earlier, all this wouldn't have happened. After saying that, she shot the man beside her a chagrined look. You're no better. It's because you allowed him free rein in everything that he delayed the marriage until now. Reality has proven that Aubrey is indeed unsuited to be the mistress of the Farwell family. On the contrary, Elias felt that Lucian hadn't done anything wrong. Aubrey only did something wrong out of her anxiety to get engaged with Lucian. If he had settled down with her earlier, she wouldn't have done all those foolish things, Sonia riposted. Upon hearing that, Elias stared at her in vexation, his gaze probing. Feeling a tad guilty from the way he was scrutinizing her, Sonia muttered, I'm not saying she was right in doing all that. I merely feel that she's sincere in her feelings toward Lucian. As she finished saying that, the wretched state of the Pearson family at present flashed across her mind. Melancholic, she heaved a sigh. Ultimately, the Pearson family has been friends with us for many years, but they've now been reduced to a miserable existence by the Farwell family. It makes it appear as though we're too ruthless. Elias was likewise aware of the Pearson family's current condition. However, he didn't find any problem with his son's actions. Since Aubrey dared to make a move against a member of the Farwell family, she naturally had to be taught a lesson. As for the Queen family seizing advantage of the situation to pounce and take a bite out of the Pearson family, that was just the usual competition in business. There was no right or wrong. Elias, can you talk to Lucian about letting the Pearson family off the hook? They've already been punished enough. He won't listen to a single word I say, so you're the only one who can persuade him, Sonia ranted, grasping Elias' arm. Lifting his hand, Elias placed it over hers in consolation. To put it bluntly, the Pearson family's current condition is a result of business competition. We can't be of any help. Furthermore, if word gets out that the Pearson family had walked all over us, yet we still helped them, is the Farwell family not going to be easy prey whom everyone can attack in the eyes of others? His voice was gentle, but it left no room for negotiation. With the Farwell family's reputation coming into play, Sonia had no choice but to nix her plan. Nonetheless, she was still loath about allowing Roxanne to marry into the Farwell family. Sighing softly, she remarked in what appeared to be an unintentional manner, speaking of the Pearson family, I wonder how Essie is doing right now. Elias also missed Estella then, so he replied, go and visit her if you're worried. It so happens that I haven't seen her in a while either. We'll go and visit her together another day. Shifting her gaze to him, Sonia lamented in feigned helplessness, "How I wish. But Lucian has sent her over to Roxanne's place. I wanted to go and visit her, but Roxanne didn't allow her to approach me. It was as though I'd hurt her." Puzzlement inundated Elias. "Why? You're Essie's grandmother. Why would Roxanne forbid you from visiting Essie? Is there some misunderstanding between you both?" At that, Sonia sighed bitterly. What misunderstanding could there be? She never liked me when she left 6 years ago. That aside, I'd always wanted Lucian to be with Aubrey and objected to her being with him. Thus, she holds a grudge against me. While saying that, she hung her head and nestled into the man's embrace as though she had suffered untold grievances. Subsequently, she added, "She's already treating me in such a manner now when she hasn't gotten back together with Lucian. What should I do if she were to really marry into the Farwell family in the future? Am I going to be prohibited from visiting my own son and granddaughter?" Elias knew absolutely nothing about the issue between the two women. After hearing his wife's complaints, his first reaction was to mediate a peaceful resolution. "There must be some misunderstanding between the two of you. Everything will be fine after talking things out." At the end of the day, he didn't believe that his son would take an interest in a petty woman. When Sonia noticed that the man showed no signs of siding with her, panic swamped her. She even eked out some tears. "It's all on me. I shouldn't have poked my nose into her relationship with Lucian. But it wasn't me who forced her to leave 6 years ago. After she left, I even searched for her for a long time. And now, she wants to come back. What does she take the Farwell family for?" Tightening his grip on her, Elias stated solemnly, "I'll ask Lucian about it." Only when Sonia heard that did she feel somewhat gratified. Right then and there, Elias took out his phone and gave Lucian a call. Meanwhile, Lucian was working in the study. As soon as he saw that his father was calling, he could surmise that his mother must have said something to the man upon her return. However, he knew that Elias rarely interfered in his relationships. Without giving it further thought, he answered the call. "Is something the matter, Dad?" Elias' baritone voice rang out from the other end of the phone. "Where's Essie right now?" "At her mother's place," Lucian answered honestly. Then, he asked, "What about it?" "Your mother claims that Roxanne didn't allow Essie to approach her. What's that about? Does she have some misunderstanding toward your mother?" Verily, that was the only possibility Elias could think of. Lucian had known that his mother would undoubtedly complain to his father after returning home, but he had never expected her to make such a bogus claim. His head throbbing, he put aside the work at hand and explained patiently, "It's true that Essie isn't close to her these days, but I can promise you that it isn't because of Roxanne." Hearing that, Elias lowered his eyes and studied the woman in his arms. "Are you saying that it's your mother's fault?" At a loss for words, Lucian went silent for a few seconds in contemplation before elaborating, "Precisely speaking, there's some misunderstanding between her and Essie. For some reason, Essie has a slight aversion to her. It has nothing to do with Roxanne." Elias' eyes brimmed with confusion. "Essie has an aversion to Sonia? We watched Essie grow up, and I've seen how much Sonia doted on her. All this while, their relationship had been pretty great. Why has that changed recently?" Seemingly having guessed his father's thoughts, Lucian added, "If you're worried, you can go and see for yourself. I'll tell Roxanne about it. You can go over anytime." It so happened that Elias wanted to go and have a look personally. Hence, he agreed without any hesitation when he obtained that reply. "It's decided, then. I'll go and pick Essie up from kindergarten tomorrow evening." Lucian didn't expect his father to be in such a hurry to go and pick Estella up. After hanging up the phone, he glanced at the time. Seeing that it was still relatively early, he wanted to phone Roxanne to inform her about the situation. But on second thought, he snagged his jacket and went downstairs. Downstairs, Catalina had just prepared dinner. When she saw her employer coming down, she hollered, "The food is ready, Mr. Farwell." Lucian halted in his steps for a fleeting second. "Go on and eat. I'm not having dinner at home." Having said that, he left in huge strides without waiting for a response from her. Catalina stared at the man's back, bewildered for a moment. In the next heartbeat, understanding dawned upon her. Aha! Who else could induce such an expression on Mr. Farwell's face? He must be on his way out to visit Ms. Jarvis once more. Thus, he's also likely having dinner there. Roxanne had just finished cooking dinner and led the three children to the dining table. They had all taken their seats when the doorbell outside rang. Putting the fork in her hand down, she got up for a look. The instant she saw the person on the screen, she was momentarily stunned before she spun on her heel and went to open the door. Lucian was waiting at the door, tenderness showing in his eyes at the sight of her. After the few days they spent at Moralia, the man's demeanor toward her had grown increasingly gentle. Despite being used to seeing him with such an expression, Roxanne still felt a sense of dissonance. After all, he had only ever been cold to the outside world. "Why are you here? Didn't we agree on you staying away for 2 days?" Corralling her thoughts, she regarded Lucian before her in mystification. On the way back from Meline, Meline suggested that they avoid meeting each other for the next 2 days on the off chance that someone might spot them together. That was also Roxanne's plan, but she didn't expect Lucian to pay her a sudden visit. The man at the door quirked a brow, his tone teasing. "Shouldn't you allow me in first if you want to avoid being seen with me? If I continue standing here, and the media gets a snapshot of me," a flash of panic flittered across Roxanne's eyes, and she hastily turned sideways to allow him in. Thereafter, she carefully peeked out. It wasn't until after she had darted her eyes around and found nothing amiss that she closed the door. At the sight of her all tense and wary, Lucian assured in a deep voice, "Don't worry. I had the bodyguards do a sweep of the area." Only then did Roxanne truly rest easy. The project was getting back on track these few days, so she really didn't want a repeat of her experience a few days ago. Lucian's arrival appeared to thrill Archie, Benny, and Estella greatly. They didn't even bother eating any more but crowded over to him intimately. Deep within her, Roxanne still found it pretty unbelievable. She had always thought the man's character would be off-putting to Archie and Benny. Unexpectedly, he was extraordinarily patient with them. In fact, the boys almost liked him as much as they did her. As astonishment flooded her, she also couldn't help feeling relieved. Since they like him so much, I don't have to worry that they won't be able to accept the reality when they learn about their identities in the future. Roxanne took a set of tableware for Lucian. You haven't had dinner, right? Let's eat together. After her interactions with him the past few days, her attitude toward him had also done a 180. She was no longer as awkward before him. Nodding, Lucian sat down across from her. Is something the matter that you came over at this hour? Roxanne asked once more. Lucian glanced at the children around them before murmuring, we'll talk about that later. Let's eat first. Clocking his expression, Roxanne bobbed her head in understanding. She didn't press him for an answer anymore. The family of 5 was finally together again. That made the 3 children so happy that they were all smiles even as they ate. After dinner, they knew their parents had something to discuss, so they tactfully went to the back garden to play. Roxanne took the tableware into the kitchen. Initially, she thought that Lucian had something important to say and planned to take him to the study to talk. To her surprise, Lucian was standing at the kitchen door with his head lowered as he rolled his sleeves up when she whirled around. Before she could wrap her mind around it, the man had already strolled over casually. Picking up the bowl she had washed, he wiped it dry. Seeing that, Roxanne was again startled. That action of his gave her the illusion that they were a couple who had been married for a long time. Moreover, the picture of the high and mighty CEO of Farwell Group entering the kitchen gave others the impression that he had stepped down from his pedestal. Sheer shock deluged her. Conversely, Lucian nonchalantly started speaking of the purpose of his visit. My father wants to go to the kindergarten to take Essie home tomorrow. As his words drifted into her ears, Roxanne abruptly snapped back to reality. Have you agreed? She remembered him saying back then that his consent was required if his parents wanted to take Estella away. Yet, he seems to have misunderstood the relationship between you and my mother. For that reason, I think he should have a look for himself, Lucian replied. Although his father didn't spell things out, he knew the man suspected that Estella was only hostile toward his mother because of Roxanne's instigation. Since Elias had such a concern, he didn't mind allowing his father to see where exactly Estella's aversion to Sonia came from. Roxanne nodded in acknowledgement. Got it. Essie might be reluctant to leave me for the time being. Anyway, I'll talk to her. At that, Lucian cast her a grateful look. Thank you. Lowering her gaze, Roxanne chuckled airily. They were the ones who raised Essie in the first place. It's normal for the elderly to miss their grandchildren. However, Essie is pretty stubborn. I'll do my best to coax her. Despite saying that, she was actually worried inwardly. For some reason, Estella was exceedingly averse to Sonia. Hence, she was afraid that the latter would upset the little girl. Seemingly seeing right through her, Lucian softened his voice and promised, I'll get my mother to see reason slowly. I'm sorry you have to put up with her. When Roxanne heard that, she stilled imperceptibly. A glimmer of elation flashed across her eyes. I thought he would, at the very least, maintain a neutral stance between me and Sonia. I honestly didn't expect him to side with me. It turns out that I'm not the only one working hard when it comes to his mother's attitude toward our relationship. For a moment, she didn't quite know how to describe her feelings. Some time passed before she gradually composed herself. Lifting her eyes to him, she whispered, "Thank you." Lucian stared at her intently. "I should be the one thanking you for your willingness to persist until now despite my mother's attitude toward you." After he had said that, his gaze darkened a shade. Guilt stained his eyes. "If she realizes her mistakes in the future," I think before he had finished speaking, Roxanne had already chortled aloud. "As long as Mrs. Farwell can divest herself of her prejudice toward the boys and me, I'll be more than glad to be a family with her." She sounded incredibly sincere, her voice devoid of any pretense. Locking gazes with her earnest eyes, Lucian couldn't help leaning toward her bit by bit. Meanwhile, Roxanne was inexorably taken aback when she sensed his approach. By the time she gathered her wits about her, the man had already captured her lips. His hands spanned her waist, leaving her with no way of escaping. Fortunately, Lucian merely kissed her briefly. Shortly after, he dropped his hold on her. Upon seeing that Roxanne was still in a daze, Lucian couldn't resist lifting his hand and caressing her face. "You?" Roxanne was stupefied for several seconds before she belatedly snapped back to her senses. Mild embarrassment showed in her eyes. While the man had sneaked up on her countless times when they were in Moralia, she could more or less postulate the reason after the fact. "But this time, I didn't do anything. Why did he simply kiss me?" Innocence was written all over Lucian's face. "Sorry, I lost control." At that answer, Roxanne's eyes went wide in fury. However, she couldn't really censure him either. All she could do was turn around as though nothing had happened and put the washed tableware aside. The two of them spent some time doing the dishes. When they exited the kitchen, Archie, Benny, and Estella pestered Lucian to play with them for a while. Only when it was rather late did Lucian drive home. Needless to say, Roxanne saw him off with the three children. When they had gone back into the mansion, she watched as Archie and Benny got into bed before making her way to her bedroom to take care of Estella. "Essie, would you like to go home with your grandpa and grandma tomorrow?" Lying on the bed, Roxanne only started coaxing Estella after spending a long time bracing herself mentally. As soon as Estella heard that, her initially smiling face fell. She clutched at Roxanne's arm tightly. "No. I want to be with you, Mommy." Roxanne hugged her comfortingly. "I want to be with you too, Essie, but your grandpa and grandma miss you. Why don't you go back and keep them company for 2 days? Then, I'll go over and bring you back here again. How about that?" It took a lengthy persuasion before Estella was finally less averse to that idea. Early the following morning, Roxanne sent all 3 children to the kindergarten. When she was planning to leave, Estella clung onto the hem of her clothes, unwilling to loosen her grip. She patiently cajoled the little girl for a while before the latter entered the kindergarten at long last. Nevertheless, Estella remained morose the entire day as her mind was occupied with the fact that she had to go back with her grandparents later in the day. In the afternoon, the kindergarten hosted a mini sports competition. Only then did Estella's spark of life gradually return. Under Archie and Benny's lead, she got along smashingly with the other children. At the sight of the children all fired up, Jeffrey and the other teachers wore expressions of gratification. "I never expected Ms. Jarvis to be Essie's biological mother," Jeffrey lamented. It wasn't until he had spoken that the others dared comment on that subject. Exactly. I didn't expect Essie to be Archie and Benny's biological sister. No wonder she always clung to the boys when she used to like to keep to herself. Likewise, gladness shone in Pippa's eyes as she regarded the three children. She had been teaching Estella for a long time, so she was happier than anyone else to see the little girl's personality turning bubbly. Hearing that they were clearly favoring Roxanne, Ophelia was disgruntled. Even so, she went along with the flow. I know, right? The world of the rich is really complicated. The instant those words rang out, Pippa eyed her strangely. She couldn't shake off the feeling that Ophelia's words carried an underlying meaning to them. Sensing Pippa's gaze, Ophelia chuckled blithely. But then, they've got a happy ending. The fact that the kids have a whole family is far more important than anything else. Following that remark, the sense of incongruity within Pippa finally dissipated. She bobbed her head in agreement. No sooner had she retracted her gaze than a chilly gleam glinted in Ophelia's eyes. Ha! Isn't Roxanne and her family's so-called happy ending thanks to that stealing my best friend's man? If it weren't for her, Aubrey wouldn't have ended up in such a state today. I'll definitely teach this family a lesson on Aubrey's behalf. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.